Today on Upfront, yet another mass shooting, this time in California. Next, one man's call for elected leaders to move beyond politics and start looking for answers to the epidemic of mass shootings. My guest is Mayor Steve Scafidi, who led the city of Oak Creek through the Sikh temple shooting. Plus, mixed signals on the Wisconsin economy. Layoffs are up, but unemployment is down. What's the state of the state's economy? And the race for state Supreme Court. Madison trial attorney Claude Covelli on what he'd bring to the bench.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. So what do we do? That, again, is the question following the latest mass killings in America. Wednesday, a husband and wife opened fire at a holiday gathering in San Bernardino, California. 14 people were killed, 21 wounded. Evidence suggests the shooters may have been radicalized and supported the terrorist organization ISIS. We'll set aside the attackers' motives for a moment to talk about the all-too-common response to mass killings in this country: angry rhetoric and finger-pointing over gun control and gun violence. A suburban Milwaukee mayor is calling on elected leaders to move past politics and start talking about ways to reduce this epidemic. Steve Scafidi led the city of Oak Creek through the Sikh temple shooting in August of 2012. He wrote an opinion piece after this latest mass killing that appeared on JS Online last week. And Mayor Scafidi joins us now on Up Front. Mayor, it's good to have you on the program. You said in your op-ed piece that you've had enough. What did you mean by that?
Well, thanks for having me on. You know, as these shootings unfold, and it seems like, you know, an ever-increasing pace, I've had enough of hearing these stories and not seeing any action to back them up. We all run to our TVs, we watch the coverage, we see the tragedies unfold, but there's not that next step to what we do about it. So my op-ed is a challenge to not only electeds, but residents, people who vote for the electeds. Start thinking about what we can do in the future to make some difference on this. Let's not accept the status quo that this is just part of life now.
So that is the question. What can we do? You have ideas about what can be done. What are they?
I do. Obviously, I'm familiar with the situation because of what happened in Oak Creek in 2012. But I look at it in a short term and long term. Short term, we have to keep our people safe. So there's entities that need to look at public safety in the way they do business. If you're a school, you should have school resource officers. In Oak Creek, we share that cost with the school district. So have that presence in your schools. It's important. Most of the schools now have security doors. That's a good start. If you're a public entity, like in this case it was a county building that was shot up, make sure that you have a police presence. It doesn't have to be all the time, but make sure that there's a police presence some of the time. In Oak Creek, we use our police aides to monitor some of the traffic in and out of our building, attend some of our meetings, so that the public can see there's a police presence always ongoing, and that awareness is there. That might dissuade someone from coming in and trying to do something like that. And finally, if you're a private business, you should really be thinking about the security of your building. You should not be able to walk in to offices where you have the potential for violence. Long term, it's about education. It's about outreach to our young people to make them understand that they need to appreciate the diversity in this country, not fear diversity. Those are things we can do long term. Fund programs that actually work, fund the CDC that can actually look at what causes violence.
That's an interesting point about not fearing diversity. Are you concerned about that? When we know some of the facts about what happened in San Bernardino, you know, there are certain components to that could make people fearful. What is your specific concern about that?
I see it because I am very much in tune with what happens in our local Sikh community, obviously, but I spoke at a Muslim community center in Morton Grove last month. They are concerned about the backlash that's coming towards them because of the perception that they are someone to be feared. These are people that are celebrating their faith, different than maybe you or I celebrate our faith, but they are U.S. citizens, they're invested in this country, they want to see the best for this country, and they're fearful. So we have to bridge that. So the way I've done it is, and I've worked with groups like the Interfaith Conference in Milwaukee, and they have meetings where they bring groups and faiths together, and we talk about differences and similarities, and what you find out is when you have conversations with people that look differently, that pray differently, that maybe even act differently or dress differently, that you have much more in common than you have different. Those bridges start to mend some of the long-term effects of diversity. We are going to be a minority-majority country in about 25 years. That problem, if you think it's a problem, is not going to go away. I happen to think diversity is a great thing, so we should start to figure that out.
We should say for the record, you're a Republican, you own a gun.
Yep.
Is gun control legislation, additional measures, is that part of the discussion, or do you think that would make any difference?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to make a great difference. We can tie ourselves up in knots about gun control and gun violence, but here's what I do endorse. I think that anyone that buys a gun should be background checked. And I know that that's controversial to some people, but I think in the reality of the world we live in, that makes sense. Whether you're somebody doing it at a gun show or any other situation, I think that should be a minimum. All the other things, I'm not interested in taking away people's guns. As I said, I'm a gun owner. Those are rights that are protected. But we all need to be more responsible with the rights that are endowed to us by the U.S. Constitution, and that means being a responsible gunner. And I use the example of gun locks. Those have saved a lot of lives. That's a reasonable, common-sense way we can make people safer. There has to be other ways that we can do that. We just have to research what they are.
In your piece that you wrote for the Journal Sentinel, you talked about the fact that we need to come together and talk about what can be done to deal with this problem. But you've received some pretty strong reaction to what you've written. Were you surprised by the reaction?
I was surprised because I was trying to write a pretty even-handed call to action, or at least let's start the dialogue to make this move forward. It doesn't surprise me, I guess, in the sense that there are people that are very entrenched in their positions. What I see as a mayor, as a citizen, is that we are very, very good at solidifying our base, right? We stay within our groups. We don't mix. We're not mixing well. By doing that, you're not getting a diversity of opinion, and I think that's hurting us. So when people can take shots at me, they do all the time, and that's part of the job. It's right. You're an elected official. That's fair game. But I understand that with that, being an elected official has a responsibility. And if I don't talk about these things from the perspective of someone that's actually lived through it, then I don't think I'm doing my job.
Mayor Steve Scafidi is the mayor of Oak Creek, the site of the Sikh temple shooting back in the summer of 2012. Thanks very much for being with us, Mayor. Appreciate it. Now it's time to tell us what you think. What would help reduce mass killings in this country? You could tell us by liking and sharing Upfront on Facebook. Next, a high number of layoffs in Wisconsin, but a low unemployment rate. What's behind some major employers leaving the state, and what does it mean for Wisconsin's economy? We'll ask when Upfront continues.
Upfront with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.